Hello, and welcome to POMA Does, a podcast produced by the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. We provide a voice for osteopathic medicine and share insights on issues important to osteopathic physicians, residents, and students, as well as those who embrace the osteopathic philosophy. POMA's mission is to promote the distinctive philosophy and practice of osteopathic medicine in Pennsylvania for our members and their patients. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey guys, I am Dr. Catherine Graham, and we are coming to you live from the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Clinical Assembly. We're all moms in medicine, so I'll give them a minute to introduce themselves and we'll jump right in.
Dr. Cynthia Meyer. I'm internal medicine, and I am a mom to a 21 and 11-year-old.
I'm Dr. Angela Zalista. I am an 11-year-old boy, almost 10-year-old boy, a 8-year-old boy. I had to think for a second, and a 7-year-old. And I'm a pediatrician, pediatric. I'm Dr. Val Roth. I'm an ENT surgeon and the proud mom of a 25-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old daughter.
I'm Dr. Pamela Goldman. I'm an internist, and I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 11.
Excellent. So I think the first question on everybody's mind is, when you guys decided to start a family, what kind of questions did you have about work-life balance? Or is that even a thing in our profession?
When I started thinking about having a family, I was a resident and I was working with another attending, and she was having her third baby, and her children came, one when she was in medical school, one in residency, and one as an attending. And her advice was to have the kids earlier in your career because you had more coverage. When she was the attending, she was solo. So I had my first one at the end of my residency, and I took off 3 months to spend with her. And back then, my school did not have a policy for maternity leave. So I then came back to make up the time that I had lost. And my second baby I had while I was in the Army, and they gave me 6 weeks.
We were a little bit different. I met my husband. My husband is a physician as well. And we met in residency. We actually did not start having children until after residency finished. But definitely, the whole time I was also pretty much solo. That was always a factor. The other thing that was a huge factor in work-life balance was childcare. I was going to be watching my kids while I'm at work, and I am very, very fortunate to have the support. My in-laws who are local. My parents are out of state, so they would be supportive if they were here. But my in-laws live 5 minutes from my house, and their care of my children has been vital to my work-life balance. So I had my first as I entered residency. I had my second 1 week after I finished residency, and I had my third then once I was an attending. And for us, my husband's not in medicine, so we had to kind of still figure out the 12 plus hour shifts that you end up doing and the overnight. And so we ended up employing a nanny, and it was extremely helpful. She's practically family.
And I have more of a non-traditional story. I had an emergency foster placement and had to figure things out within 2 days. My husband had a lot more flexibility in his schedule, and so we made that work fairly easily. And then as we were fostering and then adopting our second child, made the decision that he would be a stay-at-home dad, at least for a little bit of time, to accommodate that since my schedule was so inflexible.
So in contrast to everybody's, the majority of the stories so far, I'm 25 weeks pregnant and I'm 5 years into being an attending. So I guess it all just kind of depends on what you want to do. What did you guys find was the best, way to balance everything after maternity leave was over?
That's tough. In my particular situation, I'm a pediatrician as well. So, I have the medical kid perspective and the child, mom perspective. And honestly, I'm the type of person, easing back into it would not have gone well for me. As a hospitalist, you do so many days on, so many days off service. So I just went right back into 7 days off service, and okay, we have to do it. This has to be done. We're just going to do it kind of a cold turkey approach to maternity leave. That worked well for me. That I can see how other people need to kind of ease back into it, going back part-time, or something like that. So I'm a person that needs to just figure it out and get it done.
But for me, what I ended up doing is I transitioned jobs
after the second one and then after the third. So after the second one, I had just finished residency. So I didn't start my employment until a month or so later after I had the kiddo. And then for the third one, it was time for me to move on to a new situation. So it kind of made sense to kind of make the break at that.
When I went back, I didn't have a choice either time. It was, I had to go fully back to work from one day of spending all day with my babies to the next day being full-time back to the job. I think that is a traumatic experience for most moms and something you worry about. And it's hard. You have your teary moment, and also adding breastfeeding into the whole scenario added additional challenges there. But as always in life, you adapt and you grow with it. And as women, I think we're always trying to balance feeling guilty about being a good role model, being productive on the workforce and being a good mom at the same time. And I think that there's always guilt somewhere in there. And I don't think we should have it. We need to change society so that we should just be proud that we're doing the best we could do and be good role models.
For me, the situation was different because I didn't have any time off after both emergency foster placements. And I remember we got my now son on a Friday night, and I had a 14-hour shift on Saturday, and I was terrified to leave him alone. He could apply, of course, for FMLA for foster placements. However, that doesn't always work in medicine because you're scheduled to work a shift and there's not always coverage. So I think it also helped because the kids got very used to me working very early and used to our schedule. And then being older, they were able just to accommodate to that schedule without there being another transition of me going back to work.
Excellent. What kind of things did you guys do to adapt in the home as your children got older? I'm guessing there was more independence needed given our stressful and often complex lifestyle.
So as a pediatric hospitalist, I don't work shifts. We're in a community hospital, so I do 7 days off. So when I am on call, I have the potential to have to drop what I'm doing at that particular second to go into the hospital. My children being more independent has helped greatly with that over the years. But they are used to it. I say, Mom's got to go in for a C-section, or Mom's got to go in. There's a really sick baby. There was one point in time where I, probably about 6 of the time, helped facilitate getting me into the hospital because my child caretaker, he got super chatty despite the fact that I was in an emergency. And he's like, he's on 100% oxygen because we had explained to him, he's a very inquisitive child. And I explained to him to his understanding what was wrong with the baby and why I had to go in. And actually, I honestly think that's one of the most important things when explaining to your children why you can't be there is to be completely honest with them up to their appropriate age level. Yes, I would love to be at your baseball game. I would love to. This baby is really sick and there is nobody else to take care of this baby. And I want this baby to be healthy, free. We'll see you later, Mom. So yeah, being open and honest with your kids and really explaining to them, even if you say, I can't talk now because it's an emergency, but I'll explain when I get home. Even saying all of that, I think is really helpful to understanding kids' expectations.
When my kids were younger, they used to say, well, what do you do all day? And I said, well, I was working hospital medicine. And I said, well, people don't feel well and I help make them feel better. And so my daughter, when I would come home, she'd be like, did you make people feel better today? And I was like, yes, you know what I did. Their understanding, that was when she was like 5, right? So their understanding, again, age appropriate matter, but, helping them to understand that there's a bigger picture. It's not that you don't love them and don't want to be there for them, but that there's other people who might need your help too.
Going to flight course, I would have to take my kids with me sometimes. I'd go to the ER. I'd be pulling them out of bed at 2:00 in the morning. The ER staff was very gracious. It is a smaller hospital, so that was sure helpful. But they would have a bed waiting for my kids and tuck them in. And one day, one of my kids said to me, Mommy, I just wish you worked at Walmart like other people. And I was like, I appreciate that, baby, but how I am able to help people is really in a unique way that not everybody can do. And so I have to use those gifts to help other people. And I do think too, you talk about them being independent. And I think now as young women, they are exceedingly independent. They are very focused about helping the world around them too. And I think a lot of that comes from what they saw.
And I understand. I remember sick days where the oldest child was sleeping in a sleeping bag underneath my desk because that is what needed to happen that day. It's easier with my husband being a stay-at-home dad now. He takes a lot of the brunt when emergencies or if I am unavailable. which helps a lot. And I think they understand, like you said, to the level of their understanding of what's going on, just explaining to them what you're doing. I believe my son knows the term HIPAA very well. I'll tell him, they'll say, what was the emergency? And he may know them. So I say, well, I can't tell you. It's a privacy issue. And so he says, oh.
Hopefully he can spell it right. So any closing remarks from any of these four wonderful female moms would be greatly appreciated.
I think what I would say is every situation is unique, and having raised two children from different backgrounds, every child's unique, and every spouse and every marriage is unique. And I think finding what works for you is the only advice I have.
Yeah, I cover the nursery, so I see moms in the hospital a lot, and they'll ask my opinion on a pacifier and breastfeeding versus bottle feeding and all sorts of matters, because inevitably grandma is sticking her nose into her business.
Okay.
And I say, you're going to get thousands of pieces of advice, sometimes well-meaning, sometimes not. You take the information, you smile and say thank you, and then you decide on your own if that particular piece of advice works in your family. From the pediatrician's perspective, is the child fed? Is the child happy? Is the child healthy? That's all I need. The other piece of advice I would say is, of course, I have to have a good one. Every day is going to be a different challenge. Some days are going to be fantastic. Some days are really, really going to be challenging, and you're just grateful that you got through the day. Don't judge your worth as a mom based off of what happened that particular day. Again, are your children happy? Are they healthy? Are they growing appropriately? Those are the main keys that I think to being a mom that are so important. And at the end of the day, you can identify one good thing that happened that day that you did that day. You're doing great. You're doing absolutely great.
I would just say, be adaptable, be forgiving of yourself, talk to yourself like you would talk to anyone else. Probably be much less judgmental to other people. So talk to yourself like you're talking to a friend. And I think it's really important too that quality of time is more important than quantity.
Absolutely. I needed that. Thank you. As I've hardly seen my kids this week.
It's hard, but I do really.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for taking part of your busy day out to talk with us about this. And I am so excited to get this up and moving.
Good luck, Katie.
Yeah, good luck. It seems really scary, but it's going to be great.
You're going to do great.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Be sure to subscribe to POMA Does wherever you listen to your podcasts, and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in. Learn more about osteopathic medicine and POMA on our webpage, www.poma.org, and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, or email us at poma@poma.org. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time for another edition of POMA Does.